Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlogged Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined as usual by Tucker Hazel, and we are here today for the Skyward Sword HD vibe check, in which we give our thoughts on the game a week out from launch. Because Tucker, this is a new Zelda remake coming, well, remaster. We'll get into it, coming to Switch, and that's a big deal. But the hype is kind of down, the controversy is way up high, so we're gonna give our thoughts. But before we do, if you want to share your thoughts on Skyward Sword HD or anything else with us, join our Discord link as usual, top of the description while you're down there. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell. A lot of growth recently, but most of our traffic comes from the search bar, not from subscribers.
It's really messed up, man.
So subscribe to the channel.
Well, actually, isn't that a good thing? Because more people are finding it.
Yes, we want that subscriber number to go up.
Yeah,
we want that to go up.
Good point.
We want to convert them into believers. BL backlog believers.
Backlog believers. All right. No, God, I don't want that kind of thing.
But Tucker, are you a believer in Legends of Zelda Skyward Sword HD?
I've become a believer a lot more recently for a handful of reasons. Not only because I will not be spending money on this game.
I will be.
That's going to certainly help my experience. However, I think my excitement for giving this game a try has been greatly lifted by the sudden and entirely random announcement that they are actually adding quality of life changes to this game, more than just making it playable on the system and putting it up a smidge.
Yeah.
The announcement trailer, I think sometime last week or earlier this week, of there being quality of life changes in terms of, I think you only need to see item descriptions once. Fee, it only shows up a couple times, or it's an optional. Yeah. A lot of those things that are major complaints of the Wii game have been polished away by the fact that they are making the game better now. They're actually thinking about it. Right. And that's really exciting. I'm not one to know. I haven't played the game, so I don't know how important or how much this would have impacted my experience.
Yeah.
But the fact is, I can now see that they're actually putting more effort into this.
Sure.
Which was the biggest worry going into this, and I think why the controversy is so high. When we saw this game for the first time, and now that we're realizing that it's essentially the only thing happening for the 35th anniversary, it felt a little cheap. It doesn't look exponentially better. The button controls, we think, are less impressive, as in they need to do it to make it work on the system and not
on the light in particular.
Yes, and not like them putting in a ton of extra effort.
Right.
But this does change things a little bit, I would say. Quite a bit.
I don't think it changes anything for me.
Those quality of life changes? No? Okay.
No, I think they were kind of expected. I think that this game was always way closer in scope to Twilight Princess HD than Wind Waker HD. And so ultimately that's kind of where my expectations were at.
Sure.
And for me, I have played Skyward Sword, but not a ton of it. It's probably the Zelda game I've played the least. Well, the home console Zelda game I've played the least. I haven't played the Capcom games, which I'm going to change. Especially Minish Cap.
One character flaw.
One character flaw. But no, I think that I'll, of course, subjectively be having a lot of fun. As largely a new Zelda game, I've wagered probably 75 to 80% of the game will be doing to me. And having the quality of life things are good. They're very good. But what I'm curious about now is kind of how things are going to shake out, specifically in terms of controls.
Yeah.
The one main thought I've been having recently is kind of percolating in my head, and kind of the reason I wanted to have this vibe check here is that I don't know if these controls are going to make the game better.
Yeah.
I think that they could very well make the game worse, actually.
Sure. The button controls.
Yeah. And the reason I think that is because I was talking about this with Dan a little bit on the recent collaboration we did with Dan's Nintendo feed.
Card in the corner?
Card in the corner,
if
sure.
One of us puts it there.
It won't be me. So if you're editing the video, it might be there. If not, you're gonna have to find it yourself if I'm editing the video. But the motion controls are so intrinsic to that game's design on a core level that stripping away that sort of tactile one-to-one swordplay and relegating it to the right stick might feel just arbitrary.
Sure.
You know, because if you got your big fat bokoblin man, you gotta slice the opposite direction with a shield. That's fun when you're Link and you're swinging the sword, right? But when it's a button input, I don't know if the combat's gonna quite translate the same way. I don't know if the puzzle solving is gonna quite translate the same way.
Sure.
So I think I'm probably gonna play the game mostly with 2 Joy-Con, I think.
Sure. Now, the reason I would push back against that is that a lot of the complaints about this game are that it's forced to be played with motion controls, which is not accessible from an accessibility standpoint. People with disabilities. but also that is just not a comfortable way to play games with people. Even if
Sure.
it's designed to be that way, people are used to playing games with button controls, handheld game or no motion controls,
Yeah.
especially for long adventure games like this. It's very uncommon, and I think that comes down to personal preference and you wanting to experience it the way Nintendo initially designed it to be. But also, I don't think Nintendo would add this if it didn't feel good to play. I think it's hard to future project, and of course you could be right, but I don't think it's going to end up being a bad way to play. It's just going to be different. And if you're someone who prefers playing, as I'd say most people do,
Yeah.
without the motion controls being forced on you, it'll probably end up being a better experience.
I mean, I certainly hope so. I don't really want to be waving my fucking arms around with the Joy-Con all the time, especially considering how awful the IR on Switch can be.
That's going to be a real big
That
big kicker.
motherfucker drifts a lot.
Yeah.
It was really hard to play Pikmin 3 Deluxe that way. Actually, I just stopped using gyro at a certain point because of that. But I think the accessibility point is key. I think that having the option is key. But I just think that there's a much larger potential for this to highlight design flaws within the game opposed to elevating the entire experience.
Mhm.
Tucker, let's think about for a moment game of 2019 Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz HD.
Well, yeah, always thinking about that.
That game was meant to be played with the balance board.
Mm-hmm.
And playing with the button controls streamlined the experience, but it made it very obvious that the Monkey Ball courses are very simple.
Mm-hmm. The challenge came from using your body.
The challenge came from there, but also the invention came from it. That's why that game felt unique. That's why it felt interesting. When you're playing that with the Pro Controller, you're playing with the Joy-Con. Well, just break out the GameCube and play Monkey Ball 2, or forget about it. So I am a little bit concerned that because a lot of the conversation, listening to people like Arlo and others talk about this game, is that Skyward Sword has much deeper design flaws than quality of life, right? Quality of life is great. Having a different control scheme could be good, could highlight its flaws, but I think it could point towards there being fundamental issues with the game that just aren't getting addressed.
That's honestly, you brought up the Monkey Ball thing, and I'm like, I know where he's fucking going with this.
Right.
But I that's actually a point that I didn't really think about, and it'll be interesting to see how it breaks down of people preferring motion controls that hide the format, not the format, the gameplay issues a little better because you are using motion and that's a little more engaging from that perspective versus wanting to use the button controls because that's more comfortable, but it highlighting the issues.
Yeah.
It's going to be really interesting to see how reviews of this game pan out. Man.
It's going to be interesting.
Fascinating.
And I don't necessarily think that the motion controls are there to hide bad design.
No.
I think that the design is tailored to the motion control.
100%. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's not like, you're not going to see issues because you're fucking dumb when you're using the Joy-Con. It's like the game was designed for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be curious to see how that translates. But the other point I wanted to bring up, and you mentioned this earlier, and haven't said this on camera, so I have to get this out there for my own credit. This is the anniversary game.
Yeah.
And there's still some rumbles, apparently still some rumors that they might walk that back. We might still get Wind Waker, we might still get Twilight Princess.
I haven't heard those.
Yeah, I've seen that. Maybe it was on YouTube or Twitter. I don't remember where it was.
Reliable sources. No one ever lies on there.
No one ever lies on there.
Can't tell a joke on there.
No, but I think that's okay. Zelda gets content constantly.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking back, right? You got your Skyward Sword in 2011. As far as I remember, you got nothing in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
2013, you got Wind Waker HD, and you got Link Between Worlds.
Yes.
2014, you got Hyrule Warriors. 2015, you got Triforce Heroes. 2016, you got Majora's Mask Remake.
One was Ocarina of Time, one was Twilight Princess.
Ocarina of Time was also 2011?
I don't know. That sounds right.
Yeah, 2016 was maybe 2015 was Majora's Mask. 2016 was definitely Twilight Princess HD. Then Breath of the Wild, then Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, and then you got your Link's Awakening and your Cadence of Hyrule, and then you got your fucking Age of Calamity. Now we're getting Skyward Sword, and the next year we're getting Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
I probably got a couple of those dates screwed up, but the point is, there is so much Zelda content.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't care that it's Zelda's anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like how that kid didn't care that he broke his elbow in that vine or whatever. That's a terrible reference.
That went over my head, yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, Zelda gets content constantly, so I'm not personally disappointed by this being the anniversary celebration. I think, and I mentioned this to you off camera, Metroid, Donkey Kong, Kid Icarus, those anniversaries matter because that is an opportunity for Nintendo to feel pressure to release a game for those franchises.
Sure.
They will release a Zelda game just because it's a calendar year.
Yeah.
They'll be like, hey, it's the 36th anniversary of Legend of Zelda. Let's make something. 37th, 34th. It doesn't really matter. So ultimately, I view Skyward Sword HD as another Zelda title, basically on par with some of the remasters we've gotten in the past.
Sure.
And so I'm excited to cut through all this nonsense and just play the game myself and see how I subjectively like Skyward Sword.
Sure.
That's my vibe check.
The only thing I would say pushes out against that is the fact that Wii U ports are so common.
Sure.
That it doesn't make a ton of sense for there not to be those other things for the anniversary. It could have been spread out a little better, you know, get you Wind Waker at the beginning of the year, Skyward Sword in summer, Twilight Princess in winter. Whenever that is, they could have had those and they didn't. And I think they realized that this was going to be a disappointment to the community as they had to make a point saying, this is the only thing. If they had provided the content that people were looking for, and especially content that's not particularly difficult to put on the platform and is highly requested, then they wouldn't have had to make that statement.
See, my pushback against that is just release them in 2024. Or sorry, 2023. Because why not? Because if you're going to have Zelda every year, why does it really matter? Their games are going to come over eventually anyway. And I think it's more important probably to give Skyward Sword its time in the sun and to give the remaster the time to be talked about by the community and engaged with Breath of the Wild and then bring out more stuff.
Sure.
Nintendo's 2021 is pretty full and it has been, even if the games have been of varying quality.
Yeah.
It's been a pretty full year. And then next year you got Breath of the Wild 2. And we're already in a place where there's way too much recycled content.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think the tenor of Zelda's anniversary has changed by having more games we've already played. Skyward Sword at least is going to offer a new experience. And while you can make the case for Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, well, Twilight Princess has been played by a lot of people, but Wind Waker in particular being harder to access, less people have played it, people still are going to care about Zelda in 2 years when there's no new Zelda coming.
Yeah.
Right? That's my thought process.
And we're doing a little bit of Pong, Mario Tennis Aces, I hear. If I'm to shoot it back to defend a little bit, I would rather them say this is the 35th anniversary. Here's all 3 of those games. Double pack in spring, this in summer, whatever. Give them their time to shine in that regard, and not have to feel like they're leaning back on that the next set of years.
Yeah.
If we get those out of the way, then they can't lean back on that. And if they want to get a Zelda game, they can't just say, oh yeah, here's those ports that could have come out 2 years ago. They have to give us a new 2D Zelda spin-off, something new. And I think as we move farther into the Switch's life, those Wii U ports feel a little bit cheaper, feel a little bit lazier. It's early on the Switch. They want to get momentum. They want to get the games out there. But if it's 7 years into the Switch's life cycle and we're still getting Wii U ports, that's a little bit worrisome.
See, here comes my zone speed response to that.
Shit, okay. Mario Tennis Aces metaphor continues.
I think we saw with the tail end of the 3DS and the Wii U that Nintendo was scrambling to have Zelda content perpetually, and that led to worse games.
Sure.
Not Twilight Princess. Triforce Heroes is not an especially good game. Hyrule Warriors Legends is not an especially good game. Even Twilight Princess HD is a solid port, but it's not Wind Waker HD, right? I think that we've seen with the 5-year development cycle for Breath of the Wild 2, even factoring in COVID, factoring the fact that Grezzo is doing all kinds of things, not really knowing where the 2D Zelda team is. I would rather we had a buffer year after Breath of the Wild 2, where it was older content that filled the gap, so then we could get a new, not rushed 2D Zelda, or the next 3D Zelda, which will take several more years. I just don't think that there is a harm in spreading out the content. I suppose that's where I come down on it, because they're gonna come eventually. Like if we're not getting another Kid Icarus this year, so we're not getting a new Kid Icarus ever. That's more my thing. With these ports, which are inevitabilities, I would rather they were leveraged in a way to keep Zelda popular, keep it relevant, but give the teams the time to not strain to push out another spin-off or push out another 2D or 3D Zelda game. I mean, Age of Calamity could have used another year of development, in my opinion. So I see what you're saying. I'd rather we had that buffer.
Zone speed block, because here's the final point in this, and I think why your perspective differs from the vast majority of the community is that
because they're wrong.
But on top of that is that it's not like the precedent wasn't set for Switch era 35th anniversaries for their content. Mario 35th anniversary, we got 1 game, but it was 3 games. And Galaxy, Sunshine had never been playable on platforms before. 64 had never been re-released in that way. we're now in a place where them just releasing one game for the same price that last year we got 3 games on an anniversary. I think that's why it feels out of place.
Yeah.
They had set their precedent that they're okay with bundling things together, that they're okay with releasing their full-priced games or full-scale games on the same day, literally, because they're in the same package. There could have even been the double pack and the triple pack released on the same day. They don't necessarily cannibalize because they know people are going to play them regardless.
I think my response to that, and
God damn it! All right, we're good.
Let me use my fucking special shot.
Okay, sure. That's the final move.
Sure.
So,
yeah. Maybe you trick shot it and you fucked at the timing, so I get the star shot. I'm using my special shot to respond.
I just played Aces, by the way.
Right. That's kind of the impetus for that. You're gonna see some content about that soon, actually. So, in my opinion, a lot of the Mario 35th anniversary content was because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
There was data mining that suggested that 3D All Stars basically came together in 6 months, and it was pretty obvious by how bare bones that package was that not a lot of foresight was put into it. A 3D World plus Bowser's Fury is great, but ultimately it's a 35th anniversary game in a fiscal year sense, and nobody celebrates that way, right? I think that a lot of that content was positioned to kind of try to bump up a year when Nintendo had been completely railroaded by COVID. I'd be very interested to see what a Mario 35th anniversary looked like that was not affected by the pandemic, and to see if then we would have gotten content spaced out differently or what have you. Because ultimately we're Skyward Sword HD, I think you could make an argument that is as robust a collection or as robust an effort as 3D All Stars.
Sure.
3D All Stars was not particularly ambitious. It was not particularly well put together. A lot of the games lacked fundamental features people wanted, or things were implemented weirdly, like the Galaxy Pointer. I think that a lot of that content was out of necessity opposed to true celebration. Because you look back in the past, right? You got Skyward Sword 10 years ago, and that was the anniversary thing. With the concert and things. Or you get Kirby's anniversary, you get the Dream Collection. Mario's 25th anniversary was a ROM dump of All Stars pressed onto a Wii disc, right? I really think that last year was an outlier because there are other factors involved. And I just think that the Zelda franchise is so important that its resonance is not predicated on what year it is. Otherwise, we wouldn't have gotten another Zelda game, as I pointed out, for every year for the last 10 years. I mean, that's incredible. Annualized series sometimes miss a year. Zelda shows up every time. I just think that they're better off spreading out the content.
Sure.
So here's a big question, Tucker.
Yeah.
Let's bring it back to Skyward Sword for a second.
Why not?
Let's talk for a second before we wrap up the video, right? We got the amiibo controversy. We got some pricing concerns. We got all of these things, right? Final vibe check. Are you excited going into next Friday, or are you playing it because it's the new Zelda thing and you want to talk about it?
I am excited.
Okay.
And I think that it is the final touch on top of those quality of life features, which I think honestly are a slightly bigger deal than you're letting on.
Sure.
Because a lot of those complaints or the quality of life changes that they're making are the major complaints that made people score that game lower initially. Now that those are polished up, I think the game is more accessible. It's going to, its strengths are going to shine more when it's not buried under a layer of things that people had issues with. I think it's going to be a better received game because of that, and it also points to the fact that they are putting in even just that slight more effort than we initially thought. And also, it's the new Zelda game, and I've never played it before.
Right.
And the fact is that I haven't played it before, and it's not like most games where I could get the original game for cheaper because this one's $60. The original's still $60 because it wasn't, it wasn't a huge game. They didn't print a ton of copies. It's still hard to get.
It's on Wii U for $20.
Yeah,
if anyone wants it. But no, you make great points. And for me, where I come down on it is I'm basically on the same page as you. I think that by merit of it being a Zelda game I've not really touched, fuck everyone else. I get to play a Zelda game basically for the first time, and I get it in its best permutation, right? What I'm curious about is going to be, not having Fi chattering at you constantly. That's going to be great. Not having the same, hey, you found a blue rupee pop up. That's going to be great. But then what's the focus going to be shifted onto? How are the controls going to be implemented, as we were mentioning, things like that? So I think it's going to be very curious. So Tucker, the last thing I want to do before we leave, I just checked on my phone right now. The Metacritic average for the original is a 93.
That's pretty wild.
What is your prediction here on camera for the Metacritic average of the HD remake?
Lower.
What do you think it's gonna be?
I think it's got to be lower. I think it's got to be.
Give me a number. We're gonna play Price is Right rules.
I think it's got to be in 87.88.
87.88.
Yep. I think that's still a great game.
Sure.
It's gonna be in line with a lot of port review scores. But I think that the hype of this game not being an incredibly content-rich package, like they didn't put insane amount of effort into it, there's no new dungeons, whatever, is going to outweigh the fact that it was initially reviewed at that score. And I think also people are not as used to motion controls anymore. If they're using the motion controls and the button controls don't necessarily work, I can see this being a little more middling.
Maybe it was something of a vestigial design decision from the Wii era. It's a great word.
Did I say that?
No, that's what I said. I'm just kind of summarizing what you said.
Sure. What you gotta give your thing?
I was gonna say 91.
Okay, all right.
But I think you make a good case. I think I lost because I said Price is Right rules. I think you're probably gonna be right.
Oh, yeah, which is closest but not above.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, we'll see. 87, 88. I'll just lock in 88, and you'll say 91.
Yeah.
And we'll be back when we do a review. We'll talk about this.
Yeah, I think what I think probably is we'll have some kind of video next weekend about maybe
First impressions
of some variety. We'll goose it up for you. It won't just be our first instance. We'll figure it out, but we'll do a review, of course. It's gonna be exciting. I'm very excited. Like I said, I'm gonna pre-order the game digitally. I have the amiibo coming. I think it's coming late, unfortunately.
Oh, that sucks.
I think it's gonna arrive when I'm out of.
You can't use that quality of life fever locked behind a $20 extra thing.
It's $25 actually. I think.
Wait, really?
I'm pretty sure the amiibo was $25. It was fucking expensive.
Wait, what the fuck? Why? Is that the base suggested retail price?
I think the suggested retail price was $24.99.
Why is that so much more expensive than like every other fucking amiibo?
Loft win.
There's no fucking way.
Amiibo.
That's ridiculous.
And yeah, $24.99.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's really ridiculous. It's really absurd. I'm glad I've got a pending charge from Target for $32. I think after shipping and handling.
Jesus Christ.
For this amiibo. Oh well. We'll be back with more content. That's been our vibe check. The vibe, Skyward Sword clears the vibe check. I think the vibe check about Zelda's 35th overall might be a little bit shaky, but we'll see. Thank you for joining us.